I might not be my best, but I'm still here. So anyway, just trying to push through it, and want to welcome you and give you the floor to just introduce yourself and say, Seattle, here I am.
Hey, thank you so much. I hope everyone can hear me. I did get a chance to talk to Community Engagement Director Cross beforehand. I told her I do have a hard stop at 8:30, but I did want to take the opportunity to talk to CPC. I got the privilege of talking to CPC members during the interview process. So because I do have a hard stop, I want to begin by just giving a brief introduction of my background, and then we can just jump into any questions that anyone has. So my name is Gino Betts. I am pending confirmation from the council for the position of Director of the Office of Police Accountability. I am born and raised in Chicago, specifically born on the west side of Chicago. I live on the south side of Chicago with my family. So if you know anything about Chicago, these are the most inner parts of Chicago. And I think that experience, that personal experience, along with my professional experience, shaped my approach when it comes to police oversight. So as a kid growing up in these environments, I did have not so good encounters with police. So, you know, being stopped by the police, that was a common thing. Having my book bag opened and searched, my pants grabbed on to see what was in my pockets, that was pretty common. At the time, I'm a kid, I didn't know that was unconstitutional. I didn't know I had rights. But when I grew up, I became a prosecutor, and that's when everything turned, the tables turned. They started treating me with civility and deference and just decency. And that made me conflicted. I was really conflicted by that. I felt like, hey, you know, I shouldn't be afforded civility, decency, and just civil treatment because of my position as a prosecutor. You know, I earned that just by being a human. I earned that by being a citizen. And that's the same treatment that I want for my grandmother, who's still on the west side of Chicago, or my wife and my black boy that I'm raising on the south side of Chicago. So I then went into the work of police accountability. I was a part of the inaugural class of Chicago's Civilian Office of Police Accountability. I was an attorney there. I think we did some very meaningful and important work there. And what I really learned, you know, engaging with the community, is that building that community trust, trying to rebuild that trust, that's really the main goal of police oversight. So I approach that in everything I do. And when we're talking about, you know, policy recommendations, I know the community has to be a part of that conversation, that front end accountability. You know, I have to hear from the most impacted communities when it comes to, hey, what do we think policing should look like in our neighborhoods? What is unacceptable for us? What's not working for us? And I want to not only hear from the community, but actually value that input. So that's my plan as OPA director. I don't believe that I believe that the front end accountability, again, when we're talking about policy work, the community should be a part of that. But the back end accountability, when we're talking about investigating specific cases, then we should be insulated from any outside influences on that. I welcome any questions you have. I don't want to talk too much so that we can have enough time to dialogue. But thank you so much.
Well, we really appreciate you taking your time out, like I said earlier, and because we are accountability partners, and that's the flavor I'm really trying to bring to this leg of the stance, and I know that we have great work to do together, and I appreciate you. Like I said, if anybody has any questions, you go ahead and raise your hand, and this is our opportunity to just get to know our new OPA director.
And
And we
what I will say, just to piggyback on what you just mentioned, I plan to lean on CPC going forward. You know, I'm coming from
Okay.
Chicago. You guys are already integrated in Seattle. You know what's going on there. I'm leaning on you to tell me who I need to connect with, who I need to talk to, who are the key players, who are the stakeholders. So I'm looking
Right.
forward to a long, meaningful relationship with CPC.
So I don't know if you've met Reverend Walden yet, but she is the stakeholder here in this city, and with the whole consent decree from the very beginning. Um, as well as myself in the background. I I don't think I properly introduced myself to you, but I have been a long term. I live here in the same house I was born and raised in. And so I am embedded in this community. This work is everything to me. Everything to me. It's not just a job, it's everything to me because my parents raised me that way. And so um I just want to put my fillers out there for you. Anything, anybody you want to meet in the city, between me and Reverend Walden, we can get you there.
Thank you
So,
so much. I haven't had the privilege of meeting with Reverend Walden yet. Both of your reputations precede you. Geneva gave me the full rundown of both of you, so I'm looking forward to connecting.
Yeah,
okay.
Reverend Walden, how
So,
you doing?
yeah, yeah.
go right ahead.
Good
Jump in.
evening, sir. Good evening, sir. I'd like to welcome you to Seattle. And also, I'm just going to step away from the chair a little bit right now because I was in Chicago every summer with the late Mary Powers at Citizen Alert. She started Citizen Alert after Fred Hampton was killed. And she did the work all those years with Flint Taylor, the People's Law Firm, worked to get James Byrd fired, who had all those cases. And I worked with them with Amnesty International many, many years ago. And then we did the National Coalition for Police Accountability nationwide. So, I spent many summers in Chicago. And so, welcome to Seattle. And I was speaking for mothers then. So, but now, one of the co-chairs for the CPC, welcome to Seattle. I'm really excited about you. I mean, I don't, it takes a lot, when you've been around, but
Mm,
just to read and just to hear you. And I know what Chicago is like. I never lived there, but I was there every summer. And the international's a part of it. And did a lot of campaigns with the late Mary Powers there. And that. So and Chicago is a different city than
mhm.
Seattle, but some of the same problems are the same. I mean, wherever we are, we have the same problems around policing and trying to get constitutional policing. And I think that's what mainly the Black community wants, is constitutional policing. A lot of us
Yes.
are not defunders or abolitionists, but we absolutely want constitutional policing and for people to be held accountable. I mean, and the policies are changed and worked on so that police can be held accountable. So anyway, thank you for coming in. Thank you for saying yes to come to Seattle. I mean,
Yeah.
it's an
Mhm.
opportunity and a challenge, but thank you for coming to Seattle. Thank you.
Thank you
Look,
so
I'm
much
gonna
for
make
your words, and also thank you for your work, Reverend Walden. I really appreciate that.
yes.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I'm gonna make this public announcement, but my ex-husband is from Joliet, and so I'm not gonna hold it against you.
So let's be clear, Joliet is not Chicago.
Well, it was a bad introduction.
Um,
So
we have we have Castile that's up, and then Clayton.
okay, go right ahead. Thank you, director.
Hi, thank you for having me. It's nice to meet you, Mr. Betts. My name is Castile Hightower. I'm what you call an impacted family member. In 2004, my brother, Herbert Hightower Jr., was killed by Seattle police while he was experiencing a mental health crisis. That officer went on to be rewarded instead of held accountable for his actions and for my brother's murder, which is unfortunately far too common across the country, but specifically in Seattle, and still rings true to this day. So police accountability is something that has impacted myself, my family, and my community directly. So I do have a few questions for you. The first one is, are you willing to advocate on a regular basis for an appeal system? And this is referencing directly to the legislation that was passed unanimously in May of 2017, Resolution 31753, Section 6 speaks directly to the CPC, saying that it shall convene meetings with and lead stakeholders in assessing the need for and developing a complainant appeal process that is consistent with employee due process rights and provide any recommendations adopted by the stakeholder group to the council for consideration. If established under city ordinance or policy, CPC shall periodically review the fairness and effectiveness of such civilian appeal process, because that was passed in 2017. Yet here we are over 5 years later. We have not even started discussing what this would look like, because this involves appeals of adverse OPA findings. And because of the hundreds of adverse or missing findings from 2020, the OPA should take an active role in ensuring that this gets done. That's my first question.
All right, first of all, thank you for your question. I'm really sorry to hear what happened to you and your family and your brother in particular. I do believe, and I've always said this throughout the interview process, I question whether police are the best equipped agency to respond to mental health crises. I really like the idea, and I'm excited by the idea of having the Health One units where you have a social worker, someone who is trained specifically to respond to those types of situations. Now, the law that you cited, I'm not necessarily familiar with at this time. And I don't have the historical knowledge. I would ask, what has been the delay in implementing that piece of law that you cited?
I'm not quite sure what the delay is. It's not my responsibility. This is talking directly to the accountability systems that are built currently, that are in existence. A resolution was unanimously passed. And so we shouldn't have to wait 5 years later for us to even start discussing what that appellate process. So this is speaking directly to the appellate process of OPA
Right.
findings.
Sure.
So I would say talk to the accountability systems in place that should be putting this in place already. We haven't even started discussing it. Why is that such a slow process? I would say that will probably be part of your job, right? To find out why these appellate processes in the OPA are stagnant, why we haven't even started discussing what this appellate process looks like. So if the OPA rules in one way or another, why don't the people, the community that it says it serves, why aren't we given that appellate process to look deeper into these findings, so that possibly it could be incorrect? I mean, there was a reason why this was unanimously passed in the first place, and yet over 5 years later it hasn't been implemented. So it shouldn't take 5 years for it to be implemented.
Right. So I do want to be clear that there is, some oversight of OPA as well. We have OIG, we have independent monitor, but again, I want to get familiar with the law that you are referencing, and then connect with CPC and ask the same questions that you just asked, because I don't have the historical knowledge at this point, but I will make that my business to ask those questions.
Okay, because it is CPC's job, as it says, Resolution 31753, CPC shall convene meetings with and lead stakeholders in assessing the need for and developing a complainant appellate appeal process that is consistent with employee due process rights, and provide any recommendations adopted by the stakeholder group to the council for consideration. So that's talking about, this is CPC's job. It's already been passed over 5 years ago, yet the process, we haven't even started discussing what that process looks like. So I'd say start with the CPC and find out, why is it taking so long? This really isn't a question you should be asking me. It's a question you should be asking the people whose jobs it is to even start to talk about this appellate process, because it hasn't moved. There hasn't been a discussion about it. And this is directly impacting people who have been harmed by police violence. They're appealing these decisions, and there's no process for where that appeal goes, what that looks like. There is no appeal process that exists currently. I mean, that's an issue. That's ridiculous, right? For it to take 5 years for an appellate process to even start the discussion in regards to that.
So I do want to give, someone from CPC an opportunity to respond if they would like. If not, like I said, I will follow up and ask those same questions, and I can follow up with you.
Reverend Walden, not to put you on the spot, but you have the historical background. But I just want to say, because still, I appreciate, and like I said, we wouldn't be here if everybody agreed. So, I appreciate you coming, bringing forth the issues. I would like to say, in on behalf of Director Betts, is that he's new here, so I would really encourage you to meet up with him. I'm sure that he would be open to a meeting with you. Meet up with him, and bring your concerns forward, because other than there none of us have been on CPC more than 5 years. None of us have. So so I know I'm bringing, from the community engagement standpoint, I am bringing what I feel and what I bring to this community. Um, but and you've always been gracious to me, and I thank you for that. But I really want to work through what these issues are for you, and I want to do that in the best way possible. So I'm asking for your grace, and I'm asking for you to work with Director Betts, and let's see what we can do. What can
Uh,
we do?
that's fine. I'm not here personally just for myself. I'm here in
I know,
representation of a lot of folks. So
I
I
know
don't
you are.
know how constructive it would be right now for the end result of my question to be for me to sit down with Mr. Betts. The end result of that is, are you willing to advocate on a regular basis for an appeals process system that was already unanimously passed over 5 years ago, and that has not, we haven't even started discussing what it looks like. So, I mean, there's all type of things that you can say in regards to why that may not have occurred. I'm not necessarily here to debate that necessarily, but
I
me being
understand.
here is not necessarily because I want to sit down with Mr. Betts. It's because I have this specific question. And
Okay.
and
Reverend
I'm here
Walden?
to answer those questions. So that
I was going to see, I mean, we also have our executive director on the line also. The process has begun, and it has had some places where people that was involved with that was no longer there. And so the work group, we have Apache Divey, who was an attorney, and Erica, and the new Erica also, she's not an attorney, but she's a policy person. And so that work group has met several times, and it has not met in the last few months, but it has been working toward getting more people involved on that. And once they're not here because I'm not part of that work group, but to say that it has not never started. It's been on our agenda more than once, and so we've had some updates on it. But at this time, for the summer, none of the work groups are meeting right now. They will be meeting us up again in the fall. Good question, but it has been and like I say, Pachi Darby. I don't know if Pachi is on the line, but I was waiting to see if Brandy had a comment.
Castile, I apologize for not being on camera this evening. I'm not feeling well, but what I do want to say is, thank you for bringing up the points about the complaint appeals process. I hope to have a better update in the future, but you are absolutely right. It should not have taken that long to get up off of the ground. I will say, and it's not an excuse or a justification, but just to give some context, as Director Cross pointed out, many of us, a lot of this work predates a lot of us. There's no one outside of me that's been a part of the commission for 2 years, or at least 2 years staff wise, with the exception of the fact that I came on as a commissioner first. So I hear you, want to work on that, being able to pick up that work, but I do want you all to know that it's not something that was in vain or that anyone has forgotten about. It's just we need some traction on it, and we need folks to be engaged and help us with that.
And I would add, I understand that, you're not necessarily looking for a sit down. I do personally believe that communication and working together,
Yes.
unity, takes us a little bit further. So I still want to extend that invitation. I would love to sit down with you, see what you think that implementation looks like. If you don't want to be a part of that conversation, that's completely fine. That's up to you. But I do want to extend that invitation.
Thank you.
Okay, because I'm hearing that people haven't been on it for that long, and so maybe that's the reason why there may or may not have, I mean, as far as the public is concerned, there haven't been discussions. So from coming from that viewpoint and hearing people say, you know, we've been on it X amount of time, that's why it hasn't. So I think that just really speaks more to my question, which is, are you willing to advocate on a regular basis? Because we're hearing, you know, possibly we're hearing the whys, right? I haven't been on it that long. I don't know much about the the historical knowledge of it. Maybe I may be hearing, I don't know where to start. I'm not familiar with it enough to progress it to X, Y, and Z point. I don't know exactly, because I'm hearing a lot of reasons. But I think, you know, again, it just speaks more to my point of advocating on a regular basis. So let's say that's weekly. Let's say that's bi-weekly, right? Let's say that's monthly. Advocate on a regular system for an appeal system so that it doesn't take another 5 years. Because people's lot, you know, regardless of the reasons, what is the impact? An appeal process has not been set up for people who are directly impacted by police misconduct, police violence, a number of reasons. Whatever the reason is, this is the impact. So that should be the priority. And if it takes the consistent bugging, advocating, pushing, it shouldn't take me sitting down with y'all, because this ain't my job. It ain't my job. And it's been over 5 years. You know, call it a little tough love. You've had long enough. People's lives are still being impacted. It shouldn't take 5 years, period, point blank. So I'm hoping, Mr. Betts, that you commit to that so that people aren't continually facing roadblocks when they're advocating for themselves, advocating for the communities, advocating for their lives. So I'll leave it at that, because I feel like at this point it could just be a bunch of back and forth, and I'm really not. I prefer not to do that. So if I may, I'm just going to move on to my next question.
Okay.
Are you willing to advocate for a full audit of our accountability system, as was called for over 5 years ago? The Seattle City Council's 2022 work program on page 44 states that the council should consider recommendations of the city auditor's 2017 report on evaluating Seattle's new police oversight system. That 2017 report states that any evaluation of Seattle's new police oversight system should be rigorous, reflective of the community, and adequately resourced, and evaluate whether elected officials are providing appropriate oversight. The recent independent OIG audit indicates serious cause for alarm and action. And let me just go to a news reporting that the South Seattle Emerald published, stating the OIG, it's titled "The OIG Auditor Resigns, Claims OIG Puts OPA Allegiances Over Police Accountability." That was published August 9th of 2021 by Carolyn Bick. So again, the question is, are you willing to advocate for a full audit of our accountability system, as was called for over 5 years ago?
So the way I understand it, there is an auditing process that OIG provides of OPA's work. So there is that check and balance system. Again, this is something that I would have to look more into. I just don't have the same knowledge, historical knowledge that you have. So this is something that I would have to look more into in terms of, you know, any type of advocacy. I think we get further when we advocate together. It sounds like that you've been a part of these advocacies for a long time, and you've been doing it. What I'm just recommending is that we do it together going forward, especially if we're all in agreement. We can push forward together.
I don't think we are in agreement, Mr. Betts, and I think that's part of the issue. So again, I'm going to go back to Carolyn Bick's work, because she does brilliant work. They do brilliant work in the South Seattle Emerald talking about the issues within the OIG auditor system that caused an OIG auditor to resign, claiming again that the OIG puts OPA allegiances over police accountability.
I understand you said that report was dated 5 years ago. You know,
no, this was in 2021. This
2021. I got you. Okay, I
the
misheard.
advocacy, yeah, totally fine. The advocacy for a full audit of our accountability system was called for over 5 years ago.
Okay, understand.
And a recent independent OIG audit brought alarm, costly alarm, and for action. So
So let me just say this. Okay, I appreciate all the things you're bringing forth, because this gives our director a sense of where the community is, and so thank you for bringing all your issues forward. This is what we're here for, and I want yeah, you're not ready to sit down with him, but that's the only way we're gonna get things done is communication. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I know he's taking copious notes about
Yeah.
everything, but yeah, I know you are. And but we do, we do want to allow time for um you know other people's questions. But so I still suggest that you reach out, because South Seattle Emerald, he's not sure, he's not aware of that. But he's taking notes. So there's a lot of articles in South Seattle Emerald. Carolyn Biggs is on the call, on the line, and she makes a lot of um you, a lot of different articles in that paper. So, and it is the cry of one part of the community. So, those are notes to be taken. Thank you. Thank you, Casil. Clayton, Director Brand, can you yeah, okay, thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, I'm trying to get my system set up so it's cooperating with everything. How's that?
It's good.
Okay,
Good.
so good afternoon, Director Betts. I am a retired officer as of a little over a year ago. I welcome you to Seattle. Hopefully it turns out the way we all hope it does. But anyway, some of the things that as an officer who spent probably a good part-time more than some of the other officers in OPA, because I was trained in the old school way of doing things, if that makes sense to you. So by the time I retired, I had to adjust the way that I did the job. And I think that's going to be paramount in the way that we move forward with some of the disciplinary practices, because I do have a lot of friends who still work there. One of the things that comes to mind with me is in the interest of fairness. Some of the officers get complaints. I mean, we've had some frivolous complaints like aggressive mustache. That's to me, that's ridiculous. Somebody calling an officer rude when an officer was just being direct, that kind of thing. So one of the things that I actually suggested in a training class probably 10 years ago was, when we deal with a response to a person in crisis, a uniformed officer should not be that person's first line of contact, so to speak, right? Or one of the things I also suggested was keep a plain oversized jacket in your car. So if you do have to respond and you get there first, the first appearance or the first representation that they see is not a uniformed personnel, because that's a trigger for someone who's going through crisis, depending on what that crisis is. So those are some of the things that I hear. There's changes being made, and hopefully those changes will prevent incidents like the Carlina Lyle incident. Because I worked for the department at that time, I kind of have a little bit more insight and information than someone from outside the department may have. One of the changes since the OPA first was established over a decade ago was, so when it was first established, it was called the Office of Professional Accountability.
Mhm.
It was since changed to the Office of Police Accountability, which gave those of us who were doing the job the impression that now it's just a police headhunting unit, if that makes sense. So I asked several times to people on different levels in the command staff or within the city, why was that change initiated? And no one could ever answer that question, or when it was initiated, and no one can answer that question. Because one of my trips to the OPA was Office of Professional Accountability. The next time I'm down this Office of Police Accountability. So it just seems like they're just holding police officers in the city to a, in my opinion, sometimes an unreasonable standard. So,
So, I mean, first of all, thank you for your comments. I think the name Office of Police Accountability reflects the jurisdiction that we have, right? We only have jurisdiction over police officers. When you say Office of Professional Accountability, you know, that's very broad. It could be any type of profession. So I think Office of Police Accountability is a little bit more clear with the jurisdiction that we have.
Okay. So then if someone has a complaint with the dispatcher, who do they go to? Because we were all under the same umbrella. If you work for the city and there was a complaint, then it went to the Office of Professional Accountability. And so now it just seems like people would just have an avenue to complain against the police, when sometimes the things that are seen are the last 8 seconds of a video, well, there was actually a minute and 22 seconds of a video where someone sees a particular action being taken by an officer and they weren't there at the initial contact.
So yeah, dispatch is not under OPA anymore, the Office of Police Accountability. Again, so I think it's more reflective of our jurisdiction when we call it Office of Police Accountability. Okay.
All right. So what is, do you plan to, I hope, address the guild and the officers that you are going to be overseeing the complaints against? Because one of the things that has happened in the past is officers were promised A, B, C, and D, and they were given A, the C, B, and D, B, C, and D got dropped off. So, you know, and this, one of those particular incidents where an incident involving an officer was resolved 8 years prior to, and then the new incoming director reopened the incident and reinitiated an investigation. So that kind of things, those kind of actions with a director of the OPA really sets us kind of into an us versus them mindset, where you have an officer that's afraid to do their job because what is going to be the recourse, or what is going to be the outcome if I do my job, and then what happens is officer safety gets compromised.
Right. So I do plan for my initial, a top priority of mine is doing a community tour.
Okay.
The community, actually the day before I officially started, I went to the community selection process for the chief of police. And I got a chance to talk to, you know, community members there, not only about their expectations of a police chief, but also for, you know, myself as an OPA director. Got to hear directly from the community. A couple days later, I met with officials from the local NAACP chapter. And I do want to go to each precinct, each roll call, and talk about my vision for OPA as well, just so the expectations are clear. I do believe that officers are a meaningful part of the community. I don't believe that they are above anyone. I don't believe that they are below anyone, but they are a meaningful part of the community. But I do want to start with, you know, the most impacted folks when I start this tour. Okay.
Do you yourself have any police experience?
I was never law enforcement necessarily. I was a prosecutor for several years, but never an officer.
Okay. All right. And one last thing. Police officers get all kinds of training on dealing with the public. Does the public get training dealing with the police? And my answer to that, if I was able to answer it myself, is no. So I think that there should be some kind of group combined training where officers are expected to, or should be expected to hear how the community views them, and the community should be expected to understand why police officers do the things they do. Because in a training scenario, if someone that doesn't have any police experience, I guarantee they will lose in a scenario 99.9% of the time because they don't have the training. So therein you have a civilian capacity and an inability to understand how police work is conducted. if
I'm
that
looking
makes
for
Yes,
sense.
my
I'm
plug.
a huge
Clayton.
supporter. I'm a huge supporter of restorative justice practices.
Okay.
You know, when appropriate. The principles, you know, that's kind of the foundation of it is having dialogue and facilitating
Right.
conversation between
Right.
two groups that may not necessarily sit down typically. So you would have community members present, you would have, you know, officers present, and then we get to hear each perspective and understanding. And that goes a long way when it comes to building the community trust that we've been talking about.
Okay. Okay. Well, I appreciate your ear and good luck.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome.
Clayton, you know my plug. I'm a total you didn't give me my plug because you
I'm
know I'm a
sorry.
total advocate
Yeah.
for the Citizen Academy, the
Yes.
Community Police
Yes.
Academy.
Yeah. Well, but that's for the community. What
Yeah.
my vision is to have some training, and it could be dialogue involved, dialogue included, interactive included, where there are like the historical relevance of communities of color and the police officers. Okay.
Mhm.
It didn't start with George Floyd. It didn't start with the civil rights movement. We can go way
Right.
back as far as slave patrols and those kind of things. So you have that historical generational disdain for law enforcement. And that's something that's not addressed in either anti-bias training or racial and social justice initiative training. And you know me, it's like you have an unknown internal injury. You keep adding band-aids until you find out what the injury is. You're never going to get a resolution. Okay, so a lot of those officers who come from outlying areas and suburban areas like Juanita, Edmonds, those kind of areas, and then they get stuck in the Central District or the Rainier Valley, and they're dealing with a segment of the population that they've never had to encounter before. And so now you have an instant reaction of I'm in fear. Whereas those of us who grew up in our own environment and have had to step outside of our environment, AKA code switching, to survive. Whereas some of these other young officers, who are predominantly white, police work is a predominantly white, predominantly male profession. Okay. So then you have a segment of society that comes into an environment, a law enforcement capacity, and they lack the skills to deal with people that they're not used to dealing with. Okay. So,
Yes.
because physical expression is not an attack, in my opinion, but you have to be able to recognize that. And the one thing that we stress is you never sacrifice officer safety. But what does preserving officer safety look like? Okay. So,
well, it looks very different now that 911 is not under the police department, but that's a whole nother subject.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm always available. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate.
Thank you.
Dr. Gale is up next.
Dr. Gale? Okay, Dr. Gale. Dr. Gale, are you there? You're muted. Hello. Does he have his? Yeah, he got permissions. Dr. Gale, are you there? Who was next, Brandy? And we can come back to him.
Mama Christine.
How are we doing?
Okay, there you are. Dr. Gale, whenever you can get on, then just let me know. Mama Christine, go right ahead.
Thank you. So I joined the discussion a little late, so I missed the first portion of it. Are we, in a nutshell, discussing how the community and the police can interact safely, or what is the hot main topic, so I know better how to ask my questions?
So what I would say is that I've been getting questions about items that people are frustrated because they've never been implemented. So historical things that were promised but never implemented. So that's been the main focus of questioning.
Okay. I know I work in the nightlife industry, So I'm the security manager at Neighbors Nightclub, and I'm very much involved in our community as well as further out. I know it's always been a problematic not being able to have enough like foot patrol officers. And I know the belt's even tighter now. Is there any time soon that things can come back around so the community is safer and the police are not in such danger and they're able to respond to calls?
Is there any time soon that there will be more officers on the street?
Correct.
So I think that's a better question for Chief Diaz. I don't feel equipped to answer that question.
Okay, that's fair enough.
And he's
So-
not on the call, doesn't look like.
Can I give a quick comment on that?
Go ahead.
Chief Diaz said in a media commentary about a month or 6 weeks ago to anticipate a 10-year timeframe before we return to staffing levels that were pre-pandemic and pre-George Floyd. However, that staffing level was probably 400 officers less than what it should have been. So if you want to look at the true numbers of officers that are needed for a city the size of Seattle, you probably need 1,600 to 2,000 officers, which when Chief from Boston, I can't remember her name.
Chief O'Toole?
Chief O'Toole, when Chief O'Toole arrived in
Mhm.
Seattle and she saw that she had 1,300 police officers, she was astonished that that low level of a number of police officers for the city of Seattle, when Boston was a smaller city and had 2,000 officers. So when that question comes up about staffing, we have to look at relatively over the history of the Seattle Police Department, we've never had more than 1,300 officers to my recollection.
And
We're
where are
down.
we now?
My guess, actively responding to calls, 650, maybe 700. So when Chief Diaz makes that statement in the media, and my friends who know me ask me what that means, and my response can only be the truth, as you're looking at an understaffed police department for a decade or better.
Christine, good to hear from you again.
Thank you, thank you. Glad to be heard. So yeah, that's sadly very, very concerning.
Mhm.
As well as I had heard recently that, and I probably may be just totally out of the wrong area here, but they're no longer going to be responding to essays and anything of the sort.
No, there's been an executive order from the mayor about those situations. So I don't have all the Malik, I don't know, maybe you might have a little bit more insight on that. If not, I understand. You there?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear
Yes.
you.
Oh, I didn't hear Mama Christine's question. My apologies.
About the sexual assault investigations. I
The
know that there was. Mhm.
what recent I'm sorry, I didn't want to give it
Oh, that's okay. I don't
the
want to. I don't want to
im-
put you on the spot.
importance of the question, but an update on the where SPD is on conducting or responding
Yes.
to the recent media reports about the number of detectives that it's allocating for sexual assault investigations.
Right.
I do not
Yes.
have an update on that. It was discussed briefly today at City Council, the Public Safety Committee,
Mhm.
but it was in the wider context of the staffing and response times.
Okay. Yeah. There is some work being done. I know that, and I don't have the right information or details to give you right off. But there was an executive order from the mayor to staff the sexual assault detectives. So I can get that information for you though, Christine. I will.
That would be fantastic.
Yes. Dr.
So
Gill, are you there? Oh, hello, Dr. Gill. still can't hear him. Okay, who is
I'm not
next,
sure
Brandy?
why, but Valerie is up next.
Okay,
We can
Valerie.
get Dr. Gale situated.
Valerie.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep,
Yes.
we can hear you.
Good evening. So I just have a quick comment regarding the investigations that have been published in the South Seattle Emerald. It's a very important community newspaper, Mr. Betts, that I'm surprised that you haven't been made aware of already in taking on this very important role as head of the OPA. However, I will personally promise to send you emails and Twitter and tweets with links to those articles so you can get up to speed with what has been going on. But I would suggest that you probably have some members of your staff who are fully aware of what has been in the Emerald reporting.
So I am aware of the publication. I wasn't aware of the specific cases that were mentioned. But I do welcome whatever.
There have been many articles about what has been going on with the OPA and the OIG, including 2 investigations into whistleblower complaints from former staff members of the OIG about certification of OPA reports. I would be very aghast and gobsmacked and breathless to hear that the new director of the OPA wasn't aware of those whistleblower complaints. If you have not been made aware, that is a real incredible failing of our system. But I will happily take on the task of sending you some emails and some tweets so that you can read up on that.
So I have been made aware of those complaints that you're just talking about, the whistleblower complaints. Obviously, anything that may lead to a potential investigation or a pending investigation, we can't discuss until it is at its disposition. So that's kind of where we are at this point.
Okay, there was some discussion of you not, I think that was Felicia, you said that Mr. Betts couldn't be aware of what had been reported in the Emerald. And I just want to make sure that we bring you up to speed, Mr. Betts, as to what has been going on in Seattle with the agency that you are now taking charge of, because it's quite a mess. And I just further want to say, I won't spend any more time, but I just want to say this meeting is quite a remote sort of format. We can't see, we members of the community can't see who's in attendance. And so rather than the CPC and the OPA requesting that one community member meet with the director of the OPA, I hope that in the future, there will be meetings that are more open so that we're all part of a process of informing you all at the same time.
Absolutely. Valerie, if you have any recommendations on what meetings you think I should be attending, please reach out.
Okay, I will. Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie. Dr. Gill, are you there? Still trying to get you on. Okay. Malik, did you have a question still?
I do. Thank you. Well, welcome to Seattle, Mr. Betts. I don't know if it's on you, director or nominee Betts. And just so you know, I work at the city, but I'm asking you this question more kind of as a community member, born and raised from here. Mr. Betts, can you share what you need from us? What do you need from us, from your community? I hear it. I'm there with Castile. I'm there with Clayton. And they all know that I'm there with them. Mm-hmm. But I'm saying this to you because I want everyone who's listening to hear that we have a role to equip Mr. Betts for success. Mm-hmm. So, Mr. Betts, can you share what does it look like for this office to be successful with you at the helm? What can we as, go ahead.
So I'll ask your last question first. For me, any amount of success or any measurement of success is, are we moving closer toward building public confidence in the police oversight system? So everything that I do in this position will be geared towards building public confidence. I think a part of that is having an OPA director willing to come out and talk to the community, willing to listen to the community and actually value and implement their feedback. So I think what I need is more of what I'm getting tonight. I love the energy. I love that people are engaged, people care, you know, people, even the frustration, I appreciate it because I know it's coming from a real place. So more of that, give me some direction. Tell me what your thoughts are and tell me who you think I should be connecting with, and be open to having open conversations, be open to different perspectives, be open to dialogue. So that's really what I'm looking for from the community. Again, I think we measure that success by answering the question, are we closer today to building community trust in the oversight system than we were yesterday?
Thank you so much.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just need to tell you that Dr. Gale is logged on as Dr. Gale in Seattle Stop. So if you unmute the account for Dr. Gale, that should work.
Okay, thank you. Dr.
Mallory,
Gill.
this is Director Grant here. That's the one that we've been trying to unmute, and it actually says that he has permission to do it. So I'm still not quite sure why it's not working.
Okay, there might be an account, someone signed on as Seattle Stop. You might try that one.
Yeah, that one's. Did you, Dr. Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead, Dr. Gill.
Dr. Gale, it is unmuted. Mhm.
Yes. Mhm. Right. Okay. Okay, so just to be clear, yes, the statute does say that we can have a full civilian staff of investigators. The issue is the CBA undermines that, right? So the CBA says we have to have a mix. And the civilian investigators, they cannot investigate any case that may lead to termination. I've been clear from the beginning of this whole interview process. I've been clear to the OPA sworn investigators. We recently had a meeting last Wednesday where I introduced myself to the OPA team, and I got the same question from one of the sworn investigators. You know, where do you stand on this hybrid model that we have of civilian and sworn investigators? I was clear. I told them, I personally do not believe that having sworn investigators investigate matters of police misconduct adds to public trust or confidence in the police oversight system. There's nothing I can do about that. I don't have the power to change or renegotiate the terms of that CBA agreement. But me personally, I believe that having civilians investigate police misconduct gets us further toward public trust in the oversight system. And I told you that's how I will measure my success. Are we closer today toward increasing public confidence in the system than we were yesterday? So that's my personal opinion. I believe that the investigators should be civilian. With that said, I have had an opportunity to meet and review some of the work of the sworn investigators. This is not an indictment on them. They do the best they can. They do awesome work. They are really committed people that, for the most part, they asked to come to OPA for a reason. They wanted to see the same reforms that most people wanted to see. So it's not a knock against them per se at all. I appreciate their work, but at the end of the day, the question is what's better for the public? And I think civilian investigators would be a better solution or design for the work that we do. Right. Right. So, sure. So what I'm willing to do is what I just did, and to state publicly my position on civilian investigators being tasked with investigating police misconduct. That's what I believe the system should look like. That's what we have here in Chicago. You mentioned Newark, and I think that's the best framework for promoting public confidence in the system.
Okay. One. Okay. 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 So, Dr. Gale, we are here to welcome him today. And he got a whole lot of work ahead of him. And so I'm going to interject and say we are not here today to make um commitments of that sort. So if you want to have a different conversation, I will, I'm sure he'll welcome that, because he's just learning Seattle. And my meeting today is to welcome him to this community, to welcome him to this city. And so give him an opportunity to tap in, to get the background, to get the historical layout of all the things that you've been talking about, because I have really stood behind some of the things you have brought up, and because it is valuable information. So please allow him to just this meeting to say welcome to Seattle.
And
What
Dr.
can we
Gill,
do for you?
it sounds like you've been doing this work for a long time. I really appreciate your
Yes.
commitment to that work. I know you said you sat down with my predecessors, and I hope you extend me that same privilege. I would love to sit down and talk some more offline.
And I do appreciate you, Dr. Gill. Thank you for always bringing it, because you do. And I don't discount that, and I do appreciate you. So uh Brandy, can you tell me who's next? I think Joe or Ron.
Joseph is next.
Okay, you there, Joe? There you are.
Okay.
Okay.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. I'm the Joel Boss on the community
You're breaking up, Joe.
precinct. Just wanted to say thank you, Felicia, for having this conversation, and wanted to give a quick answer on the deployable officers that Christine brought up earlier. We're at about 800 deployable officers currently. That was the last count I got from Chief Diaz, which is way under when I joined 3.5 years ago. We were at, like Officer Powell said, around 13 to 1400. So we're way below that. And I just want to quickly say that. And then also, you or any of the community members that are on the call, we did recently, Captain Sano out of the East Precinct recently opened up ride-alongs again with officers. So if you do want to take a ride along with an officer, please email me. My information's all over the SPD. So please email me and I'll help coordinate that. And that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Joe, thank you. Thank you for that. That's great information. So Ron, can you unmute?
Hello.
There you go. We hear you.
Okay. Mr. Betts.
Yes.
My name is Ron Ward. I have been on the federal monitoring team since 2012. That's 10 years, a couple of years more than Mr. Gale, in fact. I want to welcome you to Seattle. I want to thank you for being so gracious as to make yourself available this early in your tenure to the
Yes,
community
thank you.
as a whole.
Thank you. Thank you.
I am not speaking to you tonight as a member of the monitor team. I am speaking to you as an individual who has grappled with these issues for the time that I've been involved with it. Not just as a monitor team, but as importantly as a Black man in urban America, namely Seattle, with a daughter, as a citizen of this city. And so I am not speaking for the monitor. I'm not speaking for the judge. I'm not speaking as a member of the monitor team. Mr. Betts, how long have you been in the city?
I would say a total of about 3 weeks.
Okay. Did any of that 3 weeks include the time you spent in terms of the finalization of the interview process?
So that includes the entire interview process, any subsequent training, but officially on the job as OPA director started on August 1st.
Okay. You are an obviously intelligent and articulate individual. Having said that, under no circumstances would I expect you to have a copious knowledge of the legislative ordinances, resolutions, events that have transpired since 2012 in this city with regard to the subject of police reform. And I think it's disingenuous, and I chose that term deliberately, for anyone to have that expectation of you or attempt to have you engage in, quote, commitments, unquote, until you have had an opportunity to avail yourself of that opportunity. I urge you to take the requisite time that you need to thoroughly familiarize yourself with issues that are complex to the degree that they're almost labyrinthine, okay? Which I think you may have had some taste of in your tenure in Chicago in the various capacities in which you served.
Yes.
I'm sure, and I'm not speaking for him, that the monitor also would like to avail, and the team would like to avail themselves of the opportunity. But please be aware of the complexities. And some people accuse me sometimes of being a truculent individual. If anyone can take issue with what I have just articulated, I'm a well-known, quite prominent, very reputable, and very effective lawyer. Feel free to file your cause of action and sue me. So having said that, again, welcome. I look forward to our further discussions, and best of luck and blessings on your tenure here in Seattle.
Thank you so much. Blessings to you as well.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you. That's all I wanted was to welcome you. I didn't want you to get bombarded. You got a lot of work ahead of you. We know that.
I
We know
understand
that.
that.
And so I still say, and thank you, Ron, because he did articulate that very perfectly. I wanted you to be welcome to the
Thank
city
you.
of Seattle. Thank you, Ron. Who is Brandy's helping me here? I don't know who's
Jer-
next.
Jerome.
Jerome. Okay. Thank you, Brandy. You can unmute yourself, Jerome.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. Director Betts, again, I'll echo the other sentiments here and say thank you for taking the time to meet with the community. I do want to push back a little bit on what the CPC is saying. I get that we do want Director Betts to feel welcome here, but I think it's also important to recognize that a lot of people have been very alarmed by what's going on with police accountability here in Seattle for a long time. And I know it's certainly difficult for Director Betts to experience that so early in the process, but I do think that is a genuine emotion and a genuine reflection of what's happening here in Seattle. And I wanted to say, you know, Dr. Gale's comments really resonated with me. And it has been really alarming how much the conflict of interest between sworn investigators and, you know, officers in this city has undermined real accountability, and how, you know, it's really undermined public trust, because we've seen just an alarmingly low standard of behavior that SPD officers are held to. And we've seen, you know, we've routinely seen officers who really have no place being armed on our streets continue to, you know, walk our streets with guns every day. It does seem, you know, that the CPC doesn't want hard questions asked in this forum, so I will respect that. But Mr. Betts, you know, I will try to take the time to email you directly and bring up a couple of the things that were incredibly alarming to me that happened under the last OPA director. And, you know, I think a lot of those events really made a lot of us living here in Seattle feel much less safe, and feel that, you know, calling the police isn't a safe option for us. So I'll try to keep my remarks brief and be respectful of, you know, what the CPC is trying to accomplish in this forum. But yeah, I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Jerome, thank you so much for your comments. I look forward to hearing from you.
And Jerome, let me just say, you know, this forum is for us, but I just really wanted to welcome him. That's all. I wanted him to get a feel, and I'm sure he's getting a great feel for the city, the community in Seattle. And so I don't negate anything that you, Dr. Gail, Valerie, any of you guys bring. So this is a forum for all of us, and so thank you for being respectful. But this is your forum too, and this is what I wanted. I wanted Director Betts to just be welcomed and say, and then we will bring him back again in a bit of time where we can grill him about the work. But for right now, that's all I wanted. Is that way too much to ask?
You know, I guess I'll just express my own feeling. It's for those of us who don't have a lot of time to attend these meetings, it's pretty frustrating to not be able to ask questions and get answers, especially you know, when this is something that's Seattle has really been struggling with a long time. And
Right.
you know, I would say it's fair to say we made a pretty significant step backwards under Director Meyerberg. And I think there's a lot of community sentiment that, you know, we want to see something different happen.
Okay.
And so, yeah, it was pretty disappointing to me to hear how you responded to Dr. Gale. Yeah, I'll just leave it there.
So, Jerome,
Well,
let me ask you, what part were you disappointed about?
I think it was pretty reasonable to ask for Director Gale to ask for a commitment to civilian oversight. Myself, you know, I would be really interested in hearing how you plan to raise the standard that officers are held to. You know, I know there are things you have direct control over, things that you can speak to, but that you don't have direct control over, such as civilian oversight being in the bargaining agreement. Under Director Meyerberg, we
Go ahead, I'm
really
sorry.
Director Meyerberg routinely told us that we had a great accountability system. And then every time, there was an officer that escaped discipline, he would blame technicalities within the oversight system, but he never advocated strongly to change that or was honest with the community about how flawed that system was. And I'd really like to hear, in this forum or another one, how you plan to make sure that we start raising the standards that the officers who are going to serve our city are held to.
Right. So the tool that we have to raise the standards or change the policy is to make policy recommendations. So that's what I plan to do. Before I make any policy recommendation, what I will commit to is to listen to the community, engage with the community, and hear and value the input of the community, just to see what is that perspective before we make a recommendation to change policy. So that's my commitment that I can make tonight.
I guess the last thing I'd like to advocate for, as I mentioned, Director Meyerberg routinely said that we have a great accountability system here in Seattle. And as someone who's studied a number of OPA cases, probably over 100 at this point, that's just not true. Our system is deeply flawed. And I would hope that in your role as director, I understand that sometimes the technicalities tie your hands into what you can do. But I would ask that you be honest and vocal with the community when officers are escaping discipline because of aspects of our accountability process that are out of your control, and make sure that the community knows about those so that we can, advocate for getting them changed. So thank you very much. I've taken a lot of time. I will try to turn it over to the next person. And welcome to Seattle.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jerome. Sean, you can unmute. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm all set.
Okay.
Hi there. Thanks for having this forum. My name is Sean Maloney. I am on the board of directors for the Seattle chapter of the National Association for Mental Illness. How's that for a mouthful? And then I'm also the public policy co-chair. So welcome to Seattle. And yeah, you just got to see how Seattle works, or should we say sometimes doesn't work. Now, I have to tell you, I'm new to this. We were invited at the behest of Nami Washington. So just throwing this out there, given the shortage of police officers, and we are clearly seeing the cost that's having downtown and in my neighborhood and neighborhoods throughout the city, police are not even showing up for things that they used to show up for, which I know you don't have a whole lot of control on. What my question is, we started a conversation 2 years ago with the city council that didn't get very far, saying, why are we sending police officers? And I'm not asking you to defend it, but I'm asking, why are we sending, we have a shortage of police officers. They're not trained to deal with mental health crises. It's a setup for both they and the person they encounter. When there's somebody in the midst of psychosis, their training doesn't set them up to succeed. The person with psychosis tends to be, how shall we say, triggered, as we say, by just the uniform. So what I don't understand is, why are we wasting uniformed police officers for mental health crises? Why don't we start looking at that system? And the model we're going for currently is using uniformed officers. So just wanted to throw that out there, because what we're hearing consistently from our membership is they don't see the police as the most effective means of addressing somebody in the midst of a mental health crisis. So just wanted to throw that into the mix. Welcome. I'm not going to ask you to take a position. Man, we are holding your feet to the fire. I would say that the invitation I got called it a conversation, not a welcoming. So it may be that's why you're getting some of these kind of tough questions. But
It's
again,
okay. The tough questions are welcome too, Sean. So that's okay.
Sure. All right. So it's not even clear to me about how your role is to impact that, but you do make recommendations. And And our city council, the model that has been effective, that's being looked at in a lot of cities, is the CAHOOTS model of Eugene. I don't know if you've heard about it. Eugene, Oregon has a model that uses social workers, and they have a system whereby if it's no danger to the community, there's no reason to bring a police officer. They will, of course, bring them in if they're needed. So anyway, throwing that out.
It's my understanding that Seattle has a similar system with the Health One units, and they're looking to expand that. That if there's no indication that there is violence related to the call and it's purely mental health response, that a social worker will appear and provide the appropriate resources for that individual. So I do support that.
Yeah, and what I'm hearing is it's a social worker going out with an officer. So I don't know if somebody's not giving you the correct information.
So we
go ahead.
We had Chief Lombard to come into a meeting a couple of months ago. Well, last month I guess it was. We can revisit the 988. Is the 988 that they launched about a month ago now, and so
16th,
yeah, so we can revisit and have them come back and tell us how it's going. You know, they're more than happy to explain to us. You know, I'm gonna leave my own commentary out of this, but you know, it's something the community really needs to tap in and understand how it's all, you know, how it's all set up now that the 911 is no longer up under the police department's preview. You know, you really need to pay attention to it. So I would definitely, Sean, I would definitely bring that back up, the 988.
Right. And then we've been doing a lot of promoting of the 988. The question is that too many people don't know about it, as you and I know.
Right.
And so they're calling 911, which means they're getting a different dispatch system. Am I right?
You're right.
Okay.
You're right.
And we're not surprised. One of the concerns that has been mentioned was we created this easy 988 number, but we didn't increase the resources. So I haven't heard how we are doing in terms of getting people out there, because as it was, we were waiting for mental health folks.
So I would appreciate it if you give me your if you would email me so that I can have you on my radar when we do revisit the 988.
Perfect.
Okay.
Happy to do that. I have your email in this very long chain, and I'll do that. Thanks again for letting us in and giving our voice.
Thank you. Thank
All
you
right,
for
have a
being
good-
here.
Sure.
Wyatt? Are you there, Wyatt?
I do apologize. I initially had a 30-minute cutoff. I know we're like an hour and a half into it. So maybe Wyatt can be the last question for this evening. I'll happily come back, though.
Well, we appreciate you being here.
Hey,
Okay, Wyatt. Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, hello. I was talking to Brandy Grant, and she's the one who invited me to this meeting to have some FaceTime with Director Gino Betts. The reason why I wanted to have this meeting is first, let me introduce myself. My name is Wyatt Summers. I work with the different African community centers here in South Seattle. And the reason I want to talk to Director Gino was there's a detective named Ashley Fitzgerald who has been racially profiling African community members, and they filed OPA complaints with the previous director, Perkins. And I know there's been a lot going on with the transition from the old director to the new director, so I don't know if that was being taken seriously. So I wanted to possibly give you the OPA case number so you could follow up and see where the investigation's at, Director Beck.
So yeah, I'm sure I have the case numbers, so that won't be necessary. Those cases are currently being investigated.
Right. You've heard of those cases, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, that's basically the reason why I wanted to speak with you. I just wanted to make sure that that's taken seriously, and I don't think it's right for any community members to be inappropriately contacted in order to get them to withdraw OPA complaints or try to harass them or, try to, strong arm them into withdrawing OPA complaints. So I just wanted to go ahead and, make sure that you are aware of that. But I'm glad you're aware of that. So Thank you, Director Betts.
All right, thank you for your comments.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, Wyatt.
No problem.
Okay. Director Betts. Yeah, you got a handful today, I know. So once again, we welcome you to Seattle, and thank you for your time. And we will go ahead and allow you to go ahead to your other commitments, and want to just say thank you, and we appreciate you for being here.
The other commitment is a 2-year-old that's past his bedtime. It's
Uh-oh.
9:30 here in Chicago where I am. So I really appreciate the invitation, Felicia. I look forward to having this conversation again. I appreciate the energy, the frustration. I understand it, I get it. And I look forward to having more meaningful conversations in the future. So thank you.
Thank you. We're here for you and our community. Okay. Thank you. You can go. Is
All
there
right, good night.
anything else? Good night. Take care of that 2-year-old. Is there anything else for the good of the order? Any other comments, thoughts, expressions before we give you 30 minutes of your time back? Okay. Reverend Walden, you want to nothing? Okay. All
We're good.
right. Well, you're good. All right. Well, thank you all for coming in, chiming in. I the passion, like he said, and so I appreciate everybody who took their time out today, this evening, to come and be a part of this call. Like I said, he true. I mean, the good, the bad, the ugly. He needs to know what he's walking into. So that's what we're here to elevate the voices of the community. So I want to just say thank you all. You get 30 minutes of your time back. I get to go back to my COVID hibernation. And I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.